So welcome back for more optional collection before we head on to the Fire Temple. In this video we're going to tackle the Snowdrift Station, which is a fun little side dungeon that leads to some of the rarest treasure in the game, which is required to purchase some of the Golden Train set pieces. There are several tasks we need to perform, though, in order to even unlock the Snowdrift Station, so I'm going to go over all that in this video, as well as show the dungeon itself at the end. I figure it kind of makes sense to put all of the related stuff in the same video. So first up, go to Goron Village and go left of screen, and now that we have the freight car, we can now purchase iron from the Goron here. This would be the first cargo that we've gotten so far that doesn't melt or rot all by itself. Not quite as maintenance necessary as the other ones are, but we do need to avoid getting hit with enemies as usual, though. Once you get the train loaded, set course for Whittleton/Mayscore. There's a few different paths you could take to get there, but they'll all take about the same amount of time. The fastest and simplest way at this point is actually probably just to go through the Tower of Spirits rather than using the gates, but whatever you decide, all those will probably work just fine. So this part saddens me. As you talk with a dude by the lumber pile, it almost sounds like we're breaking the news to him about the chief being gone for good, due to that side quest we did earlier in the game. And I guess the chief can't commute back and forth between Papuchia Village and here. Not that the lady in Papuchia had that much going on anyway, she was just kind of there in a house by herself, but yeah, this guy is apparently the boss now. What a way to get in charge, right? I mean, I guess the big guy isn't coming back after all, and my workload is doubled. Sweet. Talk about depressing. I'm gonna go ahead and fork over the iron so that this guy can then turn them into axes. You know, with the furnace and anvil and hammers and all that other stuff that he doesn't even have! I don't understand how he plans on doing this. Like, he is kind of burly, like maybe he's just gonna punch them into shape and sharpen their edges with his teeth or something. A real manly man, you know? That's how it was done back in the good old days, right? So this will grant you another Forest Gem, which creates some tracks next to the Forest Temple/Wooded Temple. It's just a shortcut. We don't really go that direction very often, so it doesn't make that much difference. However, now we can purchase wood. So snag a stack of 20 for 100 rupees, and if you remember from earlier, there was a furry little dude in the middle of Anuki Village who wanted to build a fence to protect them from the monsters in the surrounding areas. They're also going to need somebody to actually build the fence, and the only construction guy that we know of in the game is the bridge worker. The last place we saw him was at the trading post, where he was chillin' for no apparent reason for weeks. And at this point, you could drop off the wood in Anuki Village and then go all the way to the trading post and then go all the way back, but I think it makes more sense to do them both at the same time. So, set course for the trading post so that you can pick up the bridge worker. So the bridge worker himself has apparently been admiring his work for the last, 2.5 areas since we did the entire Ocean Realm, part of the Fire Realm, the Ocean Temple, and part of the Tower of Spirits. That's a long time to pat himself on the back, but I don't know, maybe it's a bridge thing. I'm gonna chat with him, and he'll be somewhat offended at you for asking him to build a fence. I mean, come on, that's kind of beneath him and his vast talent. But after some prodding, he will come around and not only agree, but insist that he will make the most awesomest bridge ever. That's correct, most awesomest. Now, I don't see what the big deal is. I mean, he's not doing anything anyway. Besides, the bridge itself has guardrails on it, which are like a crazy, beefy version of a fence anyway, or at least they're attached differently, but you get the idea. A fence is simple compared to that. So watch out for these signs along the way, and try not to get hit by enemies. The fastest way to get there is probably to take the gate just south of Castletown. Once you finally get there, speak with the Yellow Anuki to get this project started. They actually need 15 wood, not 10 like the previous delivery quests we've done. But I suppose you need more wood for a fence and fish for a giant casserole, I think. The dude back in Whittleton told us that if we built a house out of this wood, it'd be around for 1,000 years. I can just see it now. This fence has been in the family for generations! As reward, he'll thank you by giving you some uncommon treasure as well as a Force Gem, which unlocks the tracks just west of the Snow Temple/Blizzard Temple. This leads to the Snowdrift Station that I mentioned earlier. Yay! So once you're done here, you want to set course for the top left corner of the map, and along the way, there is another rabbit that you can get at the corner here. It's pretty fast, so it may take you a few tries. After that, you want to pummel your way through all of these Sir Frosties and finally arrive at the station at the end. Not much to say about this outer area. It's just filled with white wolfos, but there's nothing notable to find out here, so just go ahead and zigzag through the maze and finally enter the cave at the end. Alright! So this station has a puzzle in the middle, and the solution is given to us by clues that are provided in each of the 4 surrounding rooms. If you'd like to tackle the rooms, then follow along with me for the next little bit. I think they're kind of fun. Otherwise, you can skip ahead to further along in the video where I solve the puzzle. If you already know the solution, you can just skip ahead to the end and get the treasure. Now, you can go to the rooms in any order, it doesn't really matter. These mini freezards along the way can be killed with your sword, but that's rather dangerous, so instead I recommend you use the torch to melt them and then finish them off. Now, this room that I'm in currently is pretty self-explanatory. You need to use the boomerang to move the blue flame along, which creates a temporary icy platform on the water as well. You want to use it to work your way through this room, just make sure you keep moving, otherwise the ice may melt beneath your feet and you'll have to start over. Now, it may be smart if you're spending too much time in one place to either move over to a fresher piece of ice or to use the blue flame to refresh the ice that you're currently standing on. So the puzzle we're trying to solve is 5 orbs in a row. We need to figure out the order that we need to hit them in. So this clue tells us not to hit the middle one at all. So by drawing a simple diagram on your map, you can keep track of these clues without having to write down long sentences. So rather than paraphrasing what they say, you can just mark the circles and number them or whatever. So that's all we have to do here, so work your way back and pick another room to conquer. So this room can be pretty tricky. Before you start, I recommend you take out the ice keys from afar. Once it's a little safer, we need to go about taking out the octaves that are hiding under the water. Initially, I prefer to run back to land until I get them whittled down a little bit, because there's just so many coming from different directions and they're hitting you with the projectiles. If they hit your shield or whatnot, assuming they don't actually hit you in general and do damage to you, then they'll hit your shield and it'll knock you backwards because you'll slip on the ice and you could potentially just fall in the water. It's just annoying, so I prefer to run back to the land every once in a while and just refresh my little icy platform so I have some place to run back to. Once you get them whittled down a little bit, then you can start being more aggressive. There's a couple different ways to do this. You can use the whirlwind to reflect their attacks back at them, and this will kill them. However, I don't really like doing this because, again, that can blow you back into the water, and so you're just, hurting yourself that way. Awesome. You can also use the whip, and that takes 2 hits to hurt them. However, you have to be at just the right distance. If you're too close, then they'll run away, and if you're too far away, then it doesn't work, and so it's just frustrating, and I don't think that's very effective when you're slipping on the ice like this. So the last way is to simply draw a path with the boomerang. I think this is probably overall the best way to take care of them, because you're kind of guaranteeing that you're going to have a path for you to go to, so you're constantly staying on fresh ice, but also you're stunning them in the process. So I think that's by far the best way to do this. This clue may seem a bit cryptic at first, but just remember that there are 5 orbs in a row. That means that the second orb should be hit third. So if you're drawing little dots on your map, you can just erase that second dot and replace it with the number 3. Alright, block pushing puzzle. Often the best way to figure these things out is to start from the end and work your way backwards. Alright, this next section is by far the hardest part of this little dungeon, in my opinion. We have a limited amount of space that we can maneuver through here very well, and we're often fighting at least 2 octaves at a time. So you can defend yourself by using the item button to quickly block their attacks with your shield, but be warned that this will knock you back, potentially off the box. To kill the octaves, you can try and get close and then use the whip, but that's difficult to get the range just perfect, and there's arrows shooting out of the wall, so that makes it hard to get it just right. You could also stun them with the boomerang and use the whirlwind to get close and then hit them with your sword, but that's highly unlikely to work. The best method is to use the whirlwind from afar to reflect their attacks. This is time consuming, and you could, of course, just zip through here really quick and just not hit them at all, and once you get close enough, they'll dive under the water. So technically, if you just rush to the middle, you could probably get through those octaves no problem. However, they often will hit you before that happens and they'll knock you off the box, so it's a risk, but it is possible. So the only place for this clue to fit is on the right side of our diagram. We don't actually know which ones are which yet, but we're one step closer to having this solved. Now, because there's only 4 orbs to hit, this means that the one on the far left must be the first one, due to our other clue that we got earlier. So return to the main room and enter the last staircase. This room seems pretty tricky, but once you get the hang of it, it's really easy. Step on the switch to start a timer that keeps the door from closing. We need to run on the ice before that happens. You need to adjust for how slippery the surface is, meaning you need to start turning before you actually get to a corner, so that by the time you get to the corner, your momentum will be taking you in the direction you need to go. Also, a very helpful tip is to roll. Do this by double tapping on the screen. It gives you a quick boost of speed, especially when you're leaving solid ground, when you're first touching the ice. But it also changes your direction a little more abruptly, so if you're rounding a corner and somehow you're going pretty slow, just do a quick roll and it'll get you back on track. Once you get to the end, the last clue tells us first and fourth orbs are at the ends. We already knew that the one on the far left was the first one, and we knew that the second and fourth ones were on the right, but now we know where to place them. With the order finalized, we're ready to solve the puzzle. Alright, so the simplified solution to the puzzle to write it is 1, 4, 2, 5. Use the boomerang to hit the orbs in that order, and you will create a bridge to the other side. Oh no, this room locks you away with 4 mini freezards. You could stand in the middle and just use spin attacks like crazy, which does kill them quickly, but you'll probably lose several hearts in the process. There are jars outside the room that have recovery hearts, so don't worry about it too much. You can do that totally fine. But if you're compulsive like me and you want to see a challenge to see if you can do this, and you want to see if you can get through this without getting hit at all, then I recommend hiding in the corner and facing towards the room. If you're not slashing your sword, they should theoretically bonk off your shield as long as you're facing the right direction. The only catch with this is that after they hit your shield, Link often will slide backwards and he'll lose his balance, and it takes him a second to regain that so that he's defending again. Use spin attacks whenever they're moving slowly and they're next to you. Otherwise, you should hold still and let them bonk off your shield, or use regular slashes when they get close to you and when they're moving quickly. Obviously, try not to use 4 spin attacks in a row, because that will make you dizzy and vulnerable. And once the little guys are pretty smooth cone-shaped, that means that a single hit will defeat them, and it's probably best to just hunt them down at that point. Big yellow treasure chest? Obviously belongs to me. So who's responsible for this whole thing anyway? Yeah, you can have my most valuable possession, assuming you can survive my trials of death. Sweet! So this is one of only 3 alchemy stones found in the entire game, making it extremely rare. That is, of course, outside of the ones you could potentially get by completing minigames and sending in prize postcards, but those are all both kind of random, and it's unlikely that you will ever see that unless you spend a lot of time doing those. So this is required to get the optional golden train set. That was kind of an odd sentence, wasn't it? It's needed for something you don't need. Anyway, well, that's awesome. If you're not interested in getting the golden train set, you could always just sell this treasure to Linebeck for a whopping 2,500 rupees, which is pretty cool, and might come in very handy if you're working your way towards that heart container in Beetle's Airshop. Well, I think this video is definitely long enough, so join me for the next cinematic masterpiece, where I will show you how to get yet another Alchemy Stone.